Hi, I'm Dr. William Starsiak. This video is all about how to reduce your risk for Alzheimer's disease. There are multiple approaches that have been shown through the research to significantly decrease your risk. And if we combine these together, we can expect a risk reduction based on the evidence of greater than 50%, which that's pretty good. So let's get into it. What's the first recommendation? Exercise. We want to get a minimum of 150 minutes of mild exercise like walking, or 75 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity like jogging, swimming, riding a bike where your heart rate is up, you're sweating, you couldn't really hold a conversation easily, per week. So 150 mild or 75 minutes moderate or vigorous every week. And that's a minimum. So if you can do more than that, excellent. If you can get in 2 episodes of weight training per week, fantastic. Now this works by increasing brain-derived neural growth factor. It's also going to help with the lymphatic system's drainage. It's also going to help with decreasing inflammation and improving the body's ability to scavenge free radicals, improve the body's antioxidant system functioning. The next thing is diet. What are you eating? Foods can contribute to inflammation or they can be anti-inflammatory. They can contribute to oxidation or they can be antioxidant. If we eat late at night, we actually decrease the brain's lymphatic ability from draining the brain and removing these things that are associated with Alzheimer's, the beta amyloid plaques and the phosphorylated tau fibrillary tangles. So we want to make sure that we're eating good food and we're eating at the right times. So if I were to just talk about food, oh man, I could go for hours. So I want to keep this bird's eye view. The research has shown that following a Mediterranean diet decreases the risk of Alzheimer's. And this doesn't mean you have to eat, dolmades and tahini and baba ganoush. What you want to do is follow the general guidelines, where this is a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, grains, beans, nuts. It's extremely light in red meat, butter. Animal proteins that are used in it are more like poultry and fish. But you can do this as a vegetarian as well. There's other research showing that having a predominantly vegetarian diet prolongs life, so long as you do it well. Look into the guidelines of the Mediterranean diet and try to match up with that, but using vegetables that are local and seasonal to your area. So eating this way, we're going to reduce inflammation, we're going to improve your antioxidant capacity in your body, and if we follow good etiquette like not eating a lot close to bedtime, then our brain's lymphatic system can drain better when we're sleeping. This has actually been researched. So we want to leave at least 3 hours between the end of dinner and bedtime. And we're going to get into sleep next. We want bedtime to be around 10 o'clock so that we can get quality sleep. So that would put the end of dinner at 7 o'clock. Now, as we age, we don't need as many calories, and it's much harder to stay in an ideal weight range. So that gives us the opportunity to actually drop dinner altogether so that we have so much time for the intestinal system to clean up the food burden in there so that when we go to sleep, it's not having to deal with any of that cleanup and our brain's drainage is going to be maximally efficient. This would put us in the category of intermittent fasting. But instead of what most people do, skip breakfast, you skip dinner because you want calories at the beginning of the day to get your metabolic system going, to have energy when you need it. You don't want a bunch of calories right before you go to bed because it's rough on the digestive system and the lymphatic system, but it also is going to mean a lot of those calories get stored as fat. So if you're going to do intermittent fasting, try to just skip dinner. Now, I mentioned that sleep is important. Research has shown that people who get less than 6 hours of sleep, they have lower cognitive performance. People that get 7 to 8 hours of sleep have better cognitive performance, and their brain clears of these metabolic byproducts, the amyloid plaques, the phosphorylated tau, more efficiently. So the idea would be getting to bed around 10 or 10:30 and then not getting up until 8 hours after that. That's going to give you 30 minutes to fall asleep and then 5 solid sleep cycles. So if you're having trouble falling or staying asleep, that's very important to get to the bottom of and resolve. Now there's a lot of different causes for that, so I can't address them all here. I did make one video on herbs that assist with falling and staying asleep, without developing dependence or disrupting sleep architecture, because things like pharmaceuticals, zolpidem, benzodiazepines, or alcohol, or even THC, those can help with sleep, but it actually comes at the price of the quality of sleep. So herbs aren't going to answer everything, though. You got to take care of the context around sleep. Some of the highlights are: don't be exposed to daylight spectrum light after the sun goes down. As I said already, don't eat food close to bedtime, especially smoked foods, because they contain these stimulating substances, these tyramines, and aged cheeses, they also contain that as well. And having some sort of mindfulness-based practice to help you relax. Well, this actually dovetails us right into the next category, which is these mindfulness-based practices, yoga and meditation. And I say yoga and meditation because that keeps them disconnected from any particular belief system. There's no reason your belief system should lock you out of the benefits of integrating the body and the mind and practicing, focusing on one thing, and really witnessing the native state of the mind. That can't conflict with really any belief system, because we're not trying to create something or generate some sort of thought in that process. We're simply becoming aware of what is and being comfortable with being present with what is without having to be trying to accomplish something or figure something out or change it, but just getting comfortable with being in neutral. So the physical motions present in yoga, they're a great way to sort of have a ramp into meditation, because it can be hard to go from being very mentally active to just not doing anything. So the yoga asanas, the positions, and the discipline of following the breath and being mindful of the sensations in the body while you're doing these positions, it gives the body a sort of step down process to go from being very active to being a little more focused and having less distraction and activity, but not yet needing to be still. And then the relaxation at the end of yoga helps the mind really relax and open up. So then when we sit up to meditate, we have our best state to allow us to just let go into what is. So instituting a practice of yoga and meditation is very beneficial, and it has been shown to have cognitive benefits for healthy adults and shown to improve some of the initial symptoms of mild cognitive impairment associated with Alzheimer's. These 4 things have all been shown in the research to help. So I highly recommend including these in your daily life. There's a little bit of an activation barrier to clean up your diet, to realign with a better sleep cycle, to get into a regular exercise routine, and definitely to start a meditative practice. But once you get over that hump, all of these things pay off so much, and you end up getting into a positive feedback cycle. So if you're having trouble getting into it, well, you need some sort of motivation to help you get over that hump, something you see as making it worth it. And what we know is that these things will decrease the risk of Alzheimer's. So all of these things firmly established, great evidence for them. But there's some other things that I do personally. Remember, speak with your physician before beginning any of these recommendations, because you may have a particular situation that would make these generally safe practices, supplements, potentially problematic. So talk with your doctor first. So before, I mentioned this idea of the brain becoming more neurotrophic, producing more new nerve cells. Well, there are 2 herbs and 1 mushroom that I regularly work with to accomplish this effect, because they all have been shown to increase this brain-derived neural growth factor. But they've also been shown to help the brain clear these beta amyloid and phosphorylated tau proteins from the brain. And they've been shown to be anti-inflammatory for the central nervous system. So they have this suite of effects that suggest they're useful in improving our cognitive health at minimum. And research shows that the higher cognitive achievement we have in our life, the less likely we are to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So anything we can do to maximize our cognitive function before we start to decline, well, that's going to be to the good and will likely decrease our risk of Alzheimer's. Additionally, research has shown that in Alzheimer's patients, 3 months of lion's mane mushrooms produced a significant reduction in the cognitive impairment. But it's important to note that this reduction did not stay after stopping usage of the lion's mane. So you need to continue the usage. The studies didn't go beyond 3 months, so it's possible if you used it for a year or 2 years, that change may be more stable. Studies on Bacopa also showed an improvement after 3 months. It wasn't as strong as lion's mane, but still significant. And then Brahmi functions very similarly to Bacopa, and there's plenty of evidence of its benefit in healthy adults. It's been shown to improve memory, to improve executive function. So one of the principles of Alzheimer's prevention that I personally have ascribed to for quite a while, and that's emerging as the consensus in the community, is achieving a synergy. So we're not counting on one activity or one substance to carry the day. We're looking to bring together a multimodal approach, and that synergy will give us our best chance of reducing or treating Alzheimer's disease. So I recommend combining these together. And what's a good dose for these? Well, about 500 milligrams of each of them twice a day, with breakfast and with dinner. Now there's another group of 3 supplements, but they're a little bit different. They're not herbs, they're not mushrooms. These are things that are commonly used by people who are looking for performance enhancing effects, whether it's endurance, it's strength, or it's cognition. And they are taurine, important for vegetarians, HMB-CoA. This is commonly prescribed to elderly who are becoming frail because it helps us hold on to more muscle mass. But bodybuilders also use it as well, especially when they're in their cut phase, where they're losing fat, but they want to hold on to muscle. HMB will help with that. And creatine as well. Creatine, that helps with gaining muscle, but it improves cognitive performance. All of these things have been demonstrated in healthy individuals to improve measurements of cognition. And some of them have been researched in Alzheimer's. So they're safe, they're inexpensive, they're very unlikely to interact with anything that someone's taking. So these are very good candidates because even if they don't decrease the risk of Alzheimer's, they're going to give you other benefits. For taurine is 1,000 milligrams twice a day. For HMB-CoA, it's 1,000 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day. And for creatine, it's 3 to 5 milligrams a day. Omega-3 oils are also very important. There has been a lot of talk on social media and the news about the danger of seed oils. These dominantly contain omega-6s. And yes, omega-6s, if they're not balanced by omega-3 intake, they can generate a little bit of extra inflammation. How significant is that with respect to death and disease? We don't really know yet. It's probably not terribly significant, but it's still worth bringing in omega-3s. A natural source of omega-3s would be hemp seed oil. Hemp seed oil is a seed oil, and it has the perfect balance between omega-3s and 6s. So not all seed oils are bad. But when we're talking about supplementing with omega-3s, we're usually referring to EPA and DHA. This is because the type of omega-3 that's present in, say, flax or hemp seed oil, it's only very minimally converted to these super important subcategories of omega-3s, the EPA and DHA. And those are the ones that have a vascular protective property. They also have the neural protective properties, and they can stimulate new nerve growth, which is very important in this Alzheimer's prevention protocol. So you need to be taking about 4,000 milligrams minimum of these EPA and DHA omega-3s with the ratio of at least 2 to 1 EPA to DHA, but 3 to 1 is even better. I like taking these as algal oil because the higher up you get in the food chain, the more pollutants concentrate. And if you're taking fish oil, well, they're going to have to purify that to take those pollutants out. And then it just becomes a more expensive product anyways. And are they really getting all of those pollutants out? Why not just start at the source, the algae that the fish eat, you know? So Nordic Naturals has a really good brand. That's the one that I use. And I take 4 of those twice a day. That gets me up above the 4,000 milligram range, and they have the right sort of ratio already. There are 2 categories of energy medicine that have good initial evidence for improving cognition and even reversing or halting progression of the initial stages of mild cognitive impairment. And those are pulsed electromagnetic fields and transcranial magnetic stimulation as one category, and photobiomodulation as the category. Now these are very new fields. If you find a physician doing these, this physician is very cutting edge. Let's start with photobiomodulation. This involves using a particular wavelength of light to interact with biological systems. Now, the range of wavelengths we can use are from 600 nanometers to 1,100 nanometers. Now, you can get at home an LED light setup that has a 600 nanometer wavelength and an 800 nanometer wavelength, and that's pretty darn good. Those have been shown to be able to get as deep as maybe 4 centimeters and get through as much as 2% of their energy overall. But they are relatively low power compared to a laser. So whether or not that amount is significant to create the same effect as a more powerful laser can is unclear. The research is definitely not finished there. But, if you're having a little bit of hair loss, it's going to help with that anyways, and it's not going to harm you in any way. They're not terribly expensive. So if you're someone who wants to be at that cutting edge and doesn't want to wait until we have all the answers, well, it's a reasonable thing to try because it's not too expensive, it's not dangerous, and research suggests that it could help. So buying one of these hair helmets at home like iRestore is a brand that I use, and using it for 30 minutes every day, this may reduce your risk of Alzheimer's because photobiomodulation has been shown to help remove beta amyloid plaques from the brain. It's been shown to stimulate the antioxidant system, improving antioxidation. It modulates inflammation, and it increases brain-derived neural growth factor. So it does all of those things that we're looking for. The very best way to get it, though, is with a 1064 nanometer laser. This is a neodymium YAG laser. You want to get this pulsed at 100 microseconds, and your dosage is about 200 joules, treating over the frontal region and over the temporal regions. The temporal regions are important because they house the hippocampus, and that's what keeps our long-term memory. The frontal regions are important because they're involved with short-term memory processing and executive function. So we want to hit both of those regions. And the treatment is pretty fast. It's maybe 15 minutes, and you want to do it 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 weeks, and then once a week for about 4 to 8 more weeks. And then take a break and see what you get. The research shows that it will improve cognition in healthy adults and that it can improve symptoms in people that already have mild cognitive impairment. Now, the other category are pulsed electromagnetic fields. This is a pretty diverse area. There's a lot of different companies in it, and there's different ways to apply these fields. One way that's become popular in depression is transcranial magnetic stimulation, where there's a relatively high-powered probe that's projecting a magnetic field into a specific area and with specific qualities to that magnetic field. This has been studied, and one study showed that it actually halted progression of mild cognitive impairment in people with Alzheimer's for 2.5 years. That's pretty amazing. There are clinics all across the country who are beginning to develop protocols for this. So that's something that you could Google. You could reach out to a local clinic, and you could see if they've already developed their protocol. This is something that's safe, but it's not inexpensive, and it's also a little time intensive, so this may not be something that everybody can employ. Now, pulsed electromagnetic fields are a little more affordable, and they're something that you can have at home. I personally work with a Beamer mat, B-E-M-E-R. They've been in the pulsed electromagnetic field space for over 30 years. They really are the leader in that space, and they even have a contract with NASA to bring their pulsed electromagnetic fields into the spacesuit. Because one of the things we miss when we go to space is the Earth's magnetic field. A lot of people don't know that the Earth's magnetic field has beneficial properties. And that's how Beamer developed their technology. It was inspired by that field, but then they changed it a little bit. So its strength varies from about 1/3 of the strength of the Earth's magnetic field to being twice as strong. And the applicator, there's a few, but the main one is a big mat that you lay on. It's not FDA cleared for treating the head, but clinically, a lot of us use it to treat the head, including me. I treat my head. My mom has headaches that if she uses it daily, she doesn't have anymore. So it does appear to be safe on the head, even though we don't have the big FDA trials. But I have to give that caveat, right? I don't know for sure that it's completely safe on the head, but we're operating from theory in this way. And a lot of doctors have used it that way for a long time. So speak with your physician before making any decision for yourself. But what it does is it accelerates the blood flow through the microcirculation. It causes those capillaries to go through their pulsatile contractions more rapidly, which causes pressure gradients to move the red blood cells through faster. It increases the oxygen utilization by the cells because of that, because oxygen is going through more quickly. And because there's more oxygen utilization, the liver actually upregulates glutathione production. So it increases the total amount of circulating glutathione. Now, if it's interacting with the microvasculature, it's probably also interacting with the glymphatic system. And we have research showing that certain PMF technologies at certain intensities and frequencies do accelerate the clearance of these beta amyloid and phosphorylated tau proteins from the brain. And they've also showed that it increases brain-derived neural growth factor. So again, we're hitting all of those things that we want to hit, which makes it a good potential preventative and/or treatment for Alzheimer's disease. If you want to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by more than 50%, it's important that you exercise regularly, at least 75 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity or 150 of mild activity, that you have a good relationship with food. Try to align it with the principles of the Mediterranean diet and avoid processed food. The more processed food you eat, the higher your risk for Alzheimer's. You also need to be getting good sleep, at least 7 hours a night, but ideally 8 hours a night, and it should be high quality sleep that's not induced by some sort of problematic substance. And cultivate a mindfulness-based practice, yoga and meditation. That's going to allow your conscious mind to synchronize with the deeper rhythms in your physiology so that your whole system can operate more effectively. And then additionally, you could incorporate some supplements. The supplements I recommend are Bacopa, Brahmi, Lion's Mane, HMB-CoA, creatine, taurine, and omega-3s. Then if you really want to be cutting edge, look into bringing photobiomodulation and pulsed electromagnetic fields or transcranial magnetic stimulation into your life. And all of these things are also reasonable to consider in treating someone who already has mild cognitive impairment. The principles that I'm following are that they need to be safe and they need to have evidence that at least suggests they could be effective. And if they're not effective for what we're trying to use them for, ideally they have other benefits as well, and then they shouldn't be too expensive. So the last category of photobiomodulation and transcranial magnetic stimulation or pulsed electromagnetic fields, I acknowledge that is a little bit expensive. That might not work for everybody. And if you're hanging your hat on, hey, I'm going to sell my car so I can get these technologies to try to cure my loved one, well, maybe think again, because we don't know for sure they're going to help. So you need to consider your personal resources and understand that this is not a definite thing. Thank you guys very much for using me as a resource for medical information. I love when you guys put comments down there. If you got questions or other things you want me to talk about, please put them in the comment section. Also, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and have a great day.